the biggest thing that takes the hit when you're exposed is your own self-esteem. The more risk that the sport requires, the more violence is necessary. You can't survive collisions if you're not committed to them.
It's about recognizing that pain and knowing that your best days are ahead of you and that you're stronger than what this pain in your past was.
The illusion of mindset is that you actually believe you're in control of all the things that you do. The fight never stops. The fight just changes. It's like the most noble pursuit of mastery is the mastery of self.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. It is a true blessing to be able to connect with the top minds and strength each and every week and share stories, insights, and experiences on becoming stronger in every area of our lives. And now I want to do more for you. I want to invite you to join the exclusive private Facebook group of The Strength Connection. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength in their lives, and it's the perfect space to explore ideas and share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and you'll be accepted immediately. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the inside. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. We are across the pond today with my good friend Sam. What's up, man? How are you?
How you doing? I'm good, man. I'm good. Round two. This came around a little bit sooner than I thought it would, but
oh, I know. This was like a boxing match, like 1 minute rest, and then let's get right into the next 3 minute round here. So, yeah, seriously, I had a blast talking with you last time. I know we've been in a kind of business coaching group, together for a little while, but then it was the first time that I got a chance to really talk with you one-on-one on the podcast. And I say it a lot, but I'm 100% truth in this. That hour flew by in 2 seconds when we were chatting, and I was like, we need to just keep this going on point and get into it. So yeah, I mean, we'll dive into quite a few topics I think today, but like anything, I have no idea where it's going to go. So it's going to be an adventure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, last time talking with you, it was a real eye opener personally for me on talking about the modality of speed training, which is your real focus. And the thing that you mentioned that hit home to me a lot, and I had a couple people reach out with some feedback, is having those standards for speed training, just like we do with strength. And that was something that I didn't hear a lot about before. And you really designed that program to get that objective data with specific standards to follow. And I'm just like, this is such a program that I just know needs to just keep ramping out. So I know this is just going to continuously be a success for you, man. But I got to tell you, from that, I started getting back into sprint training myself.
Okay. Yeah.
And I got to tell you, from not doing sprint training for a while to get back into it, oh my gosh, like that hits your body different than any strength training program.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's freaking crazy. So, but one thing I wanted to dive into you with is a little bit more on the mindset side of coaching and athletics. So, I mean, you were a high level athlete in rugby for a long time. Obviously that comes with mindset from there. But I guess my first question I would ask you is, being in a top level athletic competition for a while, did you already know early on that mindset was a really important piece to it? Or was that something that you saw more of an impact of later down the line?
Yeah, it's a good question. But first of all, thank you for all the feedback that came from the last podcast. That's so good. And just on that, when for me, one of the things that if you own a program and you create something that enables standards, it means that there's enough data gone through that process to allow you to produce those standards to which you can then rank against. So that's where it comes from. It's because it's patience and time and building that process that, becomes predictable then ultimately. So in terms of the mindset side of things, from playing my own, and the importance of it, I'll tell you a story. And there's probably be a few today. So I remember the first time I played rugby, my parents were working. It was half term, so summer camp or type thing. And we just got put into a group like you did a different sport every day, and we did rugby one day and it was non-contact, and for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, I just got right in the face of someone and got clean knocked out, like not knocked out but knocked down, sorry. And loved it, absolutely loved it. And then we signed up that weekend. That was a Wednesday, and we signed up to rugby that weekend. But from then, like in terms of the mindset side of things, I had a real sticking point in terms of some of the physicality side of things. Like tackling was a real issue for me, and it stuck with me for a long time because I was tall and very skinny, and I played out on the wing for a lot of my career. And, you know, so when I was 17, I was 6'2" and only weighed what would be like 170 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was
lean and mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really fragile.
Yeah.
And so like that carried with me. Like there was a moment when I was about 13, I had a coach, and I was fast and I'd score tries and I'd make yards, but defense was a real flaw in my game. And when if you're tall or if you're fast, but you can't tackle, you just get stuck out on the wing and you're left to it. And so he identified that in me because they started playing me at fullback, which is basically the last line of defense and a very offensive attacking position. So you can come into the line, but also when someone breaks the line, you're the last man and you've got to make your tackles. So for what was good for me in my attacking, it then, like Newton's third law, it demonstrated how bad I was at defense. And so he worked with me and did some cool like modeling and gave me his shoulder pads. And he put me in his shoulder pads and just helped with my confidence. And he put me in positions where I couldn't escape from. And I had to make the tackles. And there was one session that we training session, and all I did was tackle. It was pure, deliberate practice. And the mindset piece for me then was really, do you want to do this? Like if you don't, then you can go home and that's fine. Like, but do you actually want to do this? And you know, when you get put in that position, you make that decision, because I couldn't progress in that game and get the satisfaction that I wanted out of that game if I didn't address that problem. And if I didn't address that difficulty that I had. And Tyrone Sterry, his name is, and I absolutely love him. He became a family friend, and has stayed with me he'll stay with me my whole career because of that moment.
Wow.
And that was when I first realized, like, the mindset piece, how important it was, because I could go home, I could leave. You know, I was 13, 14-year-old. It was wet and horrible. I didn't have to be there. And that was the decision that was made, just like, well, I'm going to do this.
So kind of when you said you kind of got in someone's face and then kind of got laid out and you loved it, like that feeling of it. Yeah. But then had that struggle with actually kind of, you know, producing your own force on somebody else. What was it about that? Was it maybe just a fear of hurting someone else, or you just didn't know if you had that aggression in you, or what was that about, you think?
Yeah, there's something, it's really interesting, because as I've grown, like I did judo as a kid, and in those one-to-one situations, I became very submissive. I'd become submissive. And I know we're going to talk about my brother at some point today. And he being 13 months younger than someone who's incredibly talented, you default to submission. And so I was, you know, we did judo and we'll do the one-to-one things. And it still largely comes with now, is I let people win. I just used to let people win. And then there was one moment, and there's all these like key defining things where, you know, you do make your big tackle and it doesn't hurt and no one gets hurt. And it's like getting over that piece of, you know, sometimes when you go to that place, bad things happen. You can get very aggressive, and now being 6'4" and nearly 230, I'm down to 230 pounds since the last time we spoke. Playing American football was a whole level different. But I was in a competition at judo, and there's nowhere to hide. Same situation as being a fullback, nowhere to hide.
Yes.
And came out, and this guy was a yellow belt. And I don't know what came over me, but I did this. I was a white belt, and I did this move called Tommy Yanagi, where you just fall backwards with the guy, put your foot in his stomach, and flip him over your head. And I won. One move. I was never meant to have won that fight and that battle, but one move. And again, it was just a mindset. It was, I have nowhere to hide. And there's lots of my stories, I end up places with nowhere to hide. And then that's when it comes out.
Yeah.
And it just, the biggest thing that takes the hit when you're exposed is your own self-esteem. And so you go into that survival mode to protect yourself and arguably protect your identity.
It's so weird as you're speaking here. It's especially, I think, with young men who are playing sports, I've seen it a lot more of there's a hesitation to get aggressive versus actually go full force in and attack. I worked with a lot of young athletes. One of them was a crew team that was, both, the boys and the girls team. And a lot of these young boys who are 15, 16 years old, like you saw them from one year, they were like 5 feet tall. The next year they come back and they're 6 feet tall. Their voice is completely changed, but they're like a big, tall string bean. They don't know what this vehicle is about yet. And so even in the weight room, they were so tentative to push weight and to put it, like they're almost so uncomfortable in their skin, versus the girls on the other side who have kind of already developed earlier. They're getting after their deadlifts and they're like crushing it out. And it's so funny that, like, personally, I had a story of playing basketball growing up, and it was, I think, 6th grade. And I was always more of a finesse type player in basketball. I didn't think of myself as like a bruiser, but I remember this game so vividly. We were getting crushed by this other team, and that we were down by like 40, and there was like a minute left to go. And I remember, like, we just kind of didn't give a shit anymore. And I was tussling with the ball with this kid. And I don't know what came over me, but instead of grabbing the ball, I kept one hand on it. I took his leg and I just flipped him over. And the kid fell on his arm. He's like looking up like, what the heck's going on? Waiting for a foul. And the rest just kind of swallowed their whistle because there's a minute left and we're down to 40. And my whole team got up and is like, like cheering like crazy. And it was this really kind of weird feeling that I had. And I like went past the ball, but then I looked back and I saw this kid, and he like was still kind of like hanging his arm down. Like his arm looked like it really got hurt. And in my head, I was like, oh shit. Like I realized I don't want to hurt anybody. And since then, anytime playing basketball, I got hit a lot, but I just always tended to go away from contact. Like I was always use my speed and kind of get away. You don't realize those things when you're a kid, of like, just like a lot of kids, like you don't want to have that ultra aggression come out because you don't want to hurt somebody coming out. But it's almost a different mindset we get from a lot of coaches of, no, go after it, be as aggressive as possible. That's not the default in most kids' minds. And it also it comes with, I think there's depending on what sport you play, there's the associated risk, and in a weird counterintuitive way, the more risk that the sport requires, the more violence is necessary in terms of physical contact, because that's the only way out. You can't survive collisions if you're not committed to them. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Mostly you get hurt when you're like holding back or somebody's pulling back on it, not just going full force and driving through the tackle.
Yeah, when you clam up and you freeze, and then you just get like smashed, and you're like, oh, that really hurt. Whereas if your belief is there and your intent is there, then by the virtue of physics, the unbalanced force is less. When if you stop, the force is greater. So, and your body has to do something with that. So it ends up through your body, as opposed to if you're neutralizing it with your own aggression, it helps.
Yeah. That term you use there, like nowhere to hide, I think that's a really interesting quote, to use there. Like I equate that so much to just life and business on there as well. Like it's a lot of the same traits and mentalities that go on there, like of putting yourself out there, of like giving your all. It's kind of the same thing when you're coaching an athlete or coaching a client. It's like, if you just go to the goal or just go to like that one level, that's one thing. But if you go through it, if you're like coaching through, the initial contact, that's when you're going to see really the great stuff that comes out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that in itself is, there's so many cliches of stuff around mindset, and arguably, especially in our field, mindset's like a huge thing that's spoke about from S&C coaches, physical preparation, whatever. And I posted something recently because somebody got my back up, and I was like, I guarantee you not one of those people has stepped into a therapy room. Not one of those people can actually truly understand mindset.
Yeah.
Because if you never get a gauge on your own ability to manage who you are or learn who you are, then you haven't got any right talking to someone else about mindset and writing affirmations and journaling and showing up early and all this sort of stuff. But you don't have a single bit of right to it, because the illusion of mindset is that you actually believe you're in control of all the things that you do.
Right.
We're preconditioned beasts.
Yeah, and it's that control of it is so interesting, right? It's mindset, especially in the world of training and strength, has this weird thought. I think that's why I like talking about it so much with people. It's because it's a lot of things in the strength world, in the speed world. Now you can see, like, it can be very objective. Like, okay, you want to get stronger. All right, you start with this weight. And then, all right, you're lifting more the next week. Okay, now you've got stronger, because we can see it. You were at 135, now you're at 145. With mindset, it's much different, because it's so intrapersonal, from there, that we throw these cliches out of, knock down, get back up, so on and so forth. But that's like, I think that's much different. So, I mean, are there specific practices that you found were really, good for you when you were working with your own personal development and mindset? I know around 2015 was when a lot of things for you changed. That was with your brother, I know, which I'm sure we'll talk about more, but is there specific practices that you found that have worked really well for you?
Yeah. And people say get knocked down, get back up. Getting back up's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And so I can, I'll digress quickly to the sort of speed side of things. And with the speed gate golf, where you're infiltrating a belief system. And one of the biggest belief systems that is known in strength and conditioning is, I'm getting better when I see the weight go up on the bar. There's an automatic association. I'm getting stronger, so I'm getting better. But we know that the shelf life of that dissipates quite quickly, in especially with speed and quickness. And so with the speed gate golf side of things, I essentially created that illusion by asking people to run and get a time that's 65 to 75% slower than their max.
Yes.
Sounds like strength training. But they don't have any weight to slow them down. So they have to slow themselves down. They have to, and there's all the musculoskeletal benefits from all of those things. But the thing is what happens to someone when they reach their first KPI? Bing, reward, dopamine. Then, I'm getting better because I got what I was tasked to get.
Yes.
And if you do the first piece is like, I believe in my coach, then the coach is telling me I've done this right. And it doesn't matter what speed you're running, but then over the course of time, this is the gamification of it. What's going to happen when you keep running faster, but ultimately you're still running slow. What happens when you keep running faster? Your belief system changes, is that I'm getting faster. So all of a sudden, it doesn't go from I'm not fast. It's actually I am fast, even though you've been running slow, because you tap into the associated belief system of weight on the bar going up means improvements going up.
Right.
Yeah. You just go speed, time coming down means I'm getting better. So it's the same belief system, but just applied in a different way. And then all of a sudden, when you say, how do you feel on the weekend? Felt fast. You've not got faster.
Right.
The most important thing that you
are it. Yeah.
Yeah. The most important thing that you can give an athlete is a belief. And just like when Tyrone put me in the shoulder pads, it's like I believed I could tackle. You know, it's like magic juice in Space Jam. It's like all this stuff, these ergogenic aids. Like with the Speedgate Golf, I'm not talking it down because there's loads of strength. Listen to the other episode if you want to learn all about that side of things, because it works.
Yeah.
However, what you've done is you just redefined something that's very difficult for a lot of people. I'm slow. No, you're not. You keep winning this game, so you're getting better. And then by the time it's time to run fast, it's bang, you're there, because you've done all of the necessary work that you need to actually be fast. So you're doing specific practice, so it's all going to go up anyway. But in your mind, it's like, 2 seconds, 1.9, 1.8, 1.7. I'm getting faster.
Yeah.
I'm faster. I'm faster. That's all you'll think.
Without trying harder.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you put someone through like, all right, going to run 10 meters as fast as you can, and then do it again, that time is just going to start smashing a negative feedback loop because it's not changing. So our fundamental preconditioned reward biases are scrambled. It's like, well, I'm just a slow athlete because I'm not running faster than the person next to me, or as fast as I would like to.
Right.
So then all of a sudden it's like,
yeah, it's so interesting when you brought that up about the Speedgate Golf, because I mean, there's a correlation on the strength side of it. Like you go 80% and you're going to get stronger, and it's the same thing. And I remember hearing that, I think I might've mentioned it last time, of when they did the research of people who went all out 100% versus say, go run at your 80%. The people at the 80% actually were running faster than those giving 100%. And in my mind, I'm curious. I'm like, is that part of like, you're not trying to control the outcome so much? Like, cause when you're going like 100% and you're just giving all out, you're almost kind of trying to force an outcome there versus that 80%. You're actually just kind of letting your natural technique and your natural ability take over more. So it's like, it's almost, and it's that term that I think a lot of us don't like using, but it's surrendering, the control. Is that a part of it, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives yourself time. It gives someone time. And in terms of, tools that I've used in terms of my own piece, my development from my own experiences of trauma and my therapy and counseling has made me understand performance to such a depth that I could never have imagined. And because there are some really fundamental universal principles at play. And so if you want someone to understand something, they need time. So, the first time I stepped in the therapy room, what did I need? I needed time and I needed space. I needed to talk. I needed a place to figure shit out. And then, what about complex exercise? It needs time, it needs space. You got to figure it out. Like you have to grease the groove, and it's exactly the same. And so, like in terms of my thought process into coaching is so different now. And it's funny, I'm getting more and more coaches that I work with from just a personal development point of view now. It's amazing. And also it's a little bit confusing. I was like, do you want to talk about speed? Nah, mate. Like, I've got some fucking issues that I want to talk to you about, my self-confidence. I'm like, let's do this. And so like, and that's why having these conversations is something I'm very happy to do. But when you're in that place, like I'm very verbal, very vocal, and being able to break down those layers and turn things into language is such a powerful tool, until you realize that language is only the combination of 5 simple sounds. And then all of a sudden your brain gets so scrambled. You're like, I'm trying to convey such complicated things and emotions and things that I'm feeling through 5 simple sounds. This is going to take some time and I'm going to need some more space to do that.
Yeah. What was it when you mentioned performance and you said your thought process on performance completely changed after doing this? What was it like? Yeah. What did you think performance was before and how did it change?
Well, it became a lot like there's lots of objective data. So if you're attached to objective data, then you're going to be all right. Nah, it's about experience. It's experience. And how are you giving someone experience? And I remember like the value of this is when I was working with lots of injured players at a professional club, like the first one that I resigned from, I remember the day I resigned was one of the days that one of my long-term athletes got back, and he had a neck disc fusion. It was 6 months rehab. And I remember that I was training his girlfriend, now wife, after work. I'd drive around her house because he developed his belief in me and to let me into his own home. And that was something so powerful. And I remember the day he got signed off, I was coaching his wife. The guy's called Joe Launchbury. You can look him up. He's played for England multiple times now and a wonderful human being. And he came down and he was like, I just want to say thank you. And he was like, he gave me, there's 2 England shirts. And there was one that was signed by the whole team. And then there was the one, he was like, this is the one that I wore in the New Zealand tour, New Zealand Test tour, in the second game. And it had like a rip in it. And I was like, that one, please. And I was holding back tears, like literally. And it chokes me up even thinking about it now. And and then that's when I realized that it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Like, it's experience. What I'd given that man was an experience, and everything else just falls into place because of it. Because training is really easy, and not a lot's changed in the last 30 years in terms of what we do. Who we are has. And the complicated world that we live in, sports getting more complicated. It's not just about lacing up and going out and earning some beer money. It's now you're a commodity and you know, all these sorts of things. So stepping into that, like, and being able to like give me a shirt that he wore in a game. He gave that to me, and in that he gives me that experience. Like playing away from home in New Zealand in the summer, that's the shirt he wore. And I was like, holy Christ. And then I told him I'd resigned that day. And I said, I'm not coming back. And then he nearly started crying. Oh my God. It was just like, man, I can't do this anymore. And he knew like some of the conditions I was working within. And he was like, I understand. I was like, you're done, mate. Like, you don't need me there anymore. And it was kind of like part of that was just holding out, and enough was enough then. And so, yeah, that's where it all changed for me. And seeing, you know, what people go through, and in my own experience with stuff. And I remember we spoke a lot about Alex Gray last time, being the person with something to prove that was bigger than the game. And when you find an athlete with something to prove that way, they're proving things to themselves. And they're breaking out of who the old version of them were. And it goes back to like one of my earliest influences of, you talk about mindset, Rocky Balboa. And not because of the obvious reasons of the hero story of winning the title. The hero story for me was becoming the man that he wanted to be. in all of that's the true story of what Rocky is. It's not about winning title. It's about self-actualization. And that's why it's so powerful in the way that he's someone who is, you know, a little bit broken, a little bit banged around by life, but also always held high values and high morals. If you go back and watch them all with a different lens, you end up seeing that he's someone who has to face a lot of his own shit to find his next level. And even going back to the old enemy, Apollo in Rocky 3, losing Mickey in Rocky 3, who does he then become? He has to become the person he needs to be for himself and then his family. You know, the beach scene, he's like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Because in the first two movies, it was about having a family with Adrian.
It's so interesting. It's so, and he screamed that on the beach. Remember, it was like, you're holding that in for a long time. That's an interesting analogy of it, and it's one of my favorite movies. I'm sure it's a favorite of a million people, and everybody remembers the 14th round. He gets knocked down and comes up. But what I remembered from that in a coaching perspective was when Mickey first came over to Rocky's place, you know, and you tell Mickey was just like that hard alpha old man that like didn't know how to express any vulnerability, where really all he wanted to say is, I believe in you and I think you have a chance to do this. But he said it kind of, you know, beating around the bush because they just didn't know how to do that. And then finally getting it out, he was screaming at him. Then finally he comes out the door and they embrace, and you don't hear that conversation on the street. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of this right now. And it's like, you know, that it was just that embrace of just having somebody, the word that you use there, Sam, is who believes in you first, and you borrow their faith, and then you use that until you have your own. And I think that's such a big thing for coaching and mindset, is that if you show that you believe in someone, you might be the first person that has really ever believed in their ability that they could do something beyond what they think they're capable of themselves.
And it goes back to that really powerful word that you use, surrender. Because a lot of people have to, and you have to surrender. The amount of times I've metaphorically fucking bowed down on both knees to myself is just like, I couldn't count them. And it all, like, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, you know, I grew up with very motivational parents, and, you know, in a loving home, but, you know, I grew up as a middle child. So, you know, I was in the dark a lot of the time. I'm a good watcher. I'm a really good people watcher. But it's probably made me a really good coach. You know, and so it's all of those things. But turning around to say to someone, do you know what? I just believe in you. I'm in this with you. And if you are, then we're going to do this. And if not, then go home. It's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to do all the things that you want to.
And if you can express it in a way of something like, I mean, you don't have to give away a jersey in every time, but an expression like that, I mean, I'm sure you could come out and say, hey, Sam, I'm so grateful for everything that you've done. I really appreciate it. But in a showing of like, here, which one you want, brother, you know, and giving that shirt, and you get that. I'm like choking up just hearing a story like that, because I can understand the impact you can create. And I think that word that you said, experience, and having those experience like that, it's always a question that I've had in coaching. Like, there's a million books, there's a million different things that you can learn and you can apply. And I think all personal development is great, but I had an old client who once, you know, he was a financial advisor, he ran a big company, and he had a bunch of very new kind of green employees. And he kind of asked, he's like, how do you train experience? And I'm like, that's a really good question. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, well, give them good experiences. And that's the best thing that you can do, as well as learning all the other stuff. But like you said, creating those experiences and making that, you'll never forget probably ever in your life when you got that jersey, you know, from it. Like that's etched in your mind forever.
Yeah. and I've never shown it to anyone. I tell the story, but I never show it to anyone because it's mine.
That's
It's
awesome.
my piece. and it's because, you know, as I've grown with this and grown with my experience, the perspective is such a wonderful thing. And when we talk about a lot of things, I believe that if you are so narrow, then you miss everything. You know, like I'm a big believer. When I left professional sport, I had no idea which way my career was going to go. And sometimes that scares the absolute life out of me. It really, really does. And sometimes it excites me. But I know everything that I'm doing is preparing me for the next piece. And there's this, I remember the first time I stepped in the therapy room, this lady, Donna, I wouldn't avoid eye contact and all this sort of stuff. And I remember the first time we went in, I cried for about an hour. And then there was 3 pictures on the wall, and there were 2 spiritual stacks of stones, you know, you see like in the Himalayas and stuff like that. And there was two stacks, 3 pictures. And it took me about 3 months to realize that the 3 pictures were all of the same 2 piles of stones, just taken from different angles. And
perspective.
And at that point I was like, wow, like I've been looking at this for 1 hour a week for the last 3 months, because I've not been looking at her. And when I'm talking to her, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And until I did. And then at that point, I'd realized I've come a long way in who I am. And, you know, from where I was and my brother died December 27th, 2015, from where I am then, before, to where I am now, I have experienced so many different versions of myself, but in the same version. And the fight never stops. The fight just changes.
Right.
And that's why, like, I'm very a big advocate of, you know, you can't tell me about mindset if you don't know how fucked up you are. You know, you don't know the pain, you don't know your trauma, you don't know your damage. You know, if you believe that you're this unscathed by the time that you're this age, then you got some problems, because this will get you. And it will get you when you are your most vulnerable.
Right.
And when that happens, that's when shit hits the fan big time. And a huge part that happened to me. And my brother had a long battle with addiction. Started from the age of about 13. And he died when he was 29. And the having lived in that shadow for such a long time, you know, he could turn up to school and not get, you know, not even listen and get A's. Premiership football academies, Premiership rugby academies, England trials, like you name it, gifted. And a very similar story to a lot of what people would hear. And loving home, everything goes right. And so, you know, I had to watch that. I was aspiring to be my brother Jack the whole time. And so there was a point in our life when I stopped really engaging with him to protect myself, and then everything that I was doing became in spite of, as opposed to be like. So the biggest epiphany that, you know, I had is that, well, you know, and I'm only now, as 6 years after he passed, that that I'm only now coming to accept that will never leave me. Excuse me. And so this is quite important. When you when you get to that point, and then you realize, well, actually, the life force of that is gone. Of that whole, some of your biggest motivations, it's gone overnight. And these aren't even like conscious motivations. Like, this is ingrained. I walked when I was 8 months old. And that's when the moment comparison and competition started.
So was it, let me see if I can phrase this right. So, in losing your brother, it was almost not only a loss of your older brother, someone you looked up to for a while, but then was your driving motivation. And even in spite of, it wasn't just losing a loved one that was so close to you, but it was also losing something internal that was driving you forward. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was lost. I was so lost. And the saddest, the hardest part, and I don't know if any listeners if you've not experienced someone who struggles with addiction, it's a very difficult place, and it's not often what you think. And I remember he died in care of the National Health Service, and he was sectioned and in a home, and there was malpractice, and he died. And that in itself, as well, as when you are left in a position where you're so powerless to help someone, that then the only people that are legally obligated and allowed to basically lock someone in a room to take care of them don't do that, and they die. It's one of the most horrific experiences to know. And so, from that point, I was just like I was just lost. I was floating, and then I remember that was December 27th, and I knew that day that something was wrong. Like, I hadn't spoke to him for 2 years before. I saw him in his supermarket aisle out of nowhere. Hadn't spoke to him for 2 years roughly before that.
Wow.
And I it was right by the yogurt, and I remember just bawling. And it's strange because, like, at that point, at that time I saw him, I knew that I probably wasn't going to see him again.
Wow.
And at the day that it happened, I remember I went to the bathroom and I just had this fear, this huge fear just come over me like nothing I'd ever felt before. And the first thing that came to my mind was, Jack's dead. And I went to my girlfriend's house that day, left my phone on. I never leave my phone on. I left my phone on. My dad rang my phone at like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I knew exactly what it was. And he had been found dead that afternoon. And so when you go and you just start unpacking all this stuff, and we had to go through an inquest which lasted months of people talking about, like, defamation of character, basically, of someone that can't defend themselves. And it was so traumatizing. And we had he was cremated, and you're talking about someone who had 300 plus people turn up to his funeral. And like, it was just unbelievable. And so then I went to Mount Everest and took some of his ashes to Everest Base Camp with me. And I played He died on the 27th. I played a game of rugby the following weekend. And it became, you talk about, you want to link this into performance, it became survival. Because for me, the only place where I don't think is on the field.
So it was like a relief for at least a few hours.
Yeah. And I remember I played and I went over to Luton, which is not too far. And then someone from before the game, someone from the opposite team, I don't know how, caught wind. And he said, "So mate, I'm really sorry to hear about your brother." And I was like, "Thank you." Yeah, that's a real universe there.
Yeah.
And so, like from that point on, life becomes really different. And I had 13 months before I was treading footsteps that he had never tread. And all of a sudden, I was always behind, always. And I've got a picture there's a picture of my brother and I racing on the beach as a kid, and his foot is over the line and my foot is on the ground behind the line. And that is literally our whole relationship. So from that point on, you talk about an emotional construct, it's just gone, like disappeared overnight. And then, as I said, I had 13 months before then I became older than him. And I didn't even get 13 minutes when I became the oldest person in this family, the oldest child.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I've got the weight of my family on my shoulders. And, whether that's coping as well, but, that level of pressure and expectation that all of a sudden assumes on me from watching it my whole life is then like, well, I don't like this. This is not me, and I went through this whole experience of resenting my parents, ruined relationships. I drank too much. I did drugs. I was all over the place. And, I've got no shame in saying that, because what I was going through is probably one of the hardest things I'd ever have to go through in my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's still, as I said, like in terms of tools and tactics, one of the biggest things is giving people space and time, and space to talk, but space to breathe. And through all tragedy and through all experience, you need that. And so one of my biggest things has been therapy, talk therapy, once a week minimum, every week. And also playing sport is huge for me. But then if you were to talk tactical in a way, I had to keep understanding my past, and I had to keep understanding who I was in my stories. Because, recently with a few things, my stories have run out. I'm at a point in my life now which is so very vulnerable, if I'm honest. And it's because you get to a point where now I've worked through all those and understood a lot more of those motivations, that they just stop driving me. And it takes through grief counseling and how I got into therapy. And I've got a funny story actually about therapy, but a really funny story. But how I got into it was that I was so lost. And I remember I sat in my car, and to the point of which these things can affect you. Like I every time I drove my car for about 6 months, I thought I was going to die. But I thought I was going to die every day. and when you're faced with your own mortality, it was harrowing experience.
Yeah.
And I remember I called up child bereavement helpline. Like I didn't know how to get therapy. And I was like, I need to speak to someone, but I couldn't speak to anyone in my family. Why? Because I never had that relationship with people in my family.
Yeah.
Because I never had the space to develop it, which is fine.
Yeah.
And so I called up this woman, this lovely woman, and it was the bereavement helpline is ran by people that have lost children. And so I spoke to this woman, I can't remember her name, and she was really nice. She was like, we can't help you because you're too old. And I just sat, and she gave me like an hour anyway, because it was wonderful.
Right.
And then that kind of put me on this journey. It's like, this is fucking empowering. Like there's so much in me that needs to be gone and needs to be spoke through and worked through. And you know, I remember after like the first few months of going in, I would have to go and spend the whole day in bed. And afterwards, and I was working, I got back to work that summer. But yeah, I'd spend the whole day in bed afterwards because I just couldn't function. And so embarking on that journey of breaking through that and learning and doing my best to learn has been one of the most powerful experiences. But I've also got a story of how vulnerable we can become, where I after 6 to 8 weeks of therapy with this lady, Donna, I thought she fancied me. And I fancied her. I had this like illusion of being attracted to this nearly 70-year-old woman. And it was like, oh my God, what is going on? And you know why? It's just because I was being listened to. She was just listening to me, and she was nice to me. And she was just, she gave me space to go to places, and she gave me safety and security and time and space. And I just laughed, like, and because it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious, especially like, you know, male, like, you know, I'd consider myself a largely alpha male in terms of a lot of things that I do. It's like, yeah, she fancies me, man. And it's like that primitive brain coming in. It's like, because you've been met with something so maternal,
and suppressed,
and being a middle, 100%, being a middle child, like my attention from my mother, like you go all Freudian and stuff, it wasn't there. It's absolutely fine. That's why I fancy older women anyway. Right. And so the
part 3 of the podcast.
The whole experience has really kind of changed my life in so many different ways, and it's like, now that, you know, I'm studying counseling as well, we've done under like the mindset qualifications as well, because it's such powerful work to give just people a small avenue towards it. And I remember how isolated and alone I was. And I remember I used to have to do guided meditation, and I remember how one time I was so lost and so afraid and so scared. I put this guided meditation on, and I'd put on one for a pregnant woman. And after the guided, like, first 30 seconds, it was like, you're a calm, strong, powerful, pregnant woman. And I laughed, and then I just cried, because I was just like, I can't even do that right. I am so lost. I need so much help. And it kind of, it was kind of like a really important lesson for me looking back on it, is that you can't do anything alone. You can't get anywhere alone. And so from like a mindset side of things, like, I believe that my best days are ahead of me. And I also know that there are probably a few dark days to come. But there's a reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
And it's because of, there's a lot more stories there, but it's because of that experience.
Yeah.
That experience,
That, yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's so impactful, and it's such an emotional thing. I even hesitate to add anything to it because it was so impactful, but I think it's so big. I'm sure you went through this, and regardless of what you've gone through before, it's, I think, a normal thing that we want to just have that pain just be gone. We don't have to deal with it anymore. And I think that's almost gets misconstrued of going through something like therapy or shadow work or darkness training, all that type of stuff that you do. We think that our ultimate goal is to get over this pain, when in reality, it's always going to be there. There's parts of ourselves and shit that we did that we don't like, experiences, terrible experience that we've gone through that we just wish could go away. We don't have to think about it anymore. But in reality, that's not what it's about. It's about recognizing that pain and knowing that your best days are ahead of you, and that you're stronger than what this pain in your past was. And you can use it as an experience to move forward. It's not fucking easy. It's a lot of shit that you go through. But I think as coaches too, something that we can all aspire to do for anybody that we work with is to listen. Like you said, it's like, you had a huge crush on a woman who just listened to you from there. It's like, it's amazing how what we can do just as individuals of just listening to somebody and just empathizing, with them, and saying that you're stronger than this, and you're going to get through, and you're going to go through some shit. Like, this is going to be a nasty fucking battle, and it could be really tough for a while, but this too shall pass. That was something my grandfather said. The last thing that he said to me, this too shall pass. It all does. It's like, okay, there we go.
Yeah. 100%. Like, there's another one, there's another corner, you just keep moving it. And it's one of the things that I always say to a lot of the coaches that I work with is, like, the most noble pursuit of mastery is the mastery of self.
Yes.
That's it. And that's it.
We're closing it on that. That was absolutely perfect. Sam, dude, it's always a blast having you on. I really appreciate it. It's not going to be too long until we'll do this again. It's just a blast talking to you. And great conversation. So I really appreciate it. Coach Sportland is a place everybody can go check out your content, get into speed training, all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's me on Insta, and we're good. I just want to say thank you for giving the space for that, definitely. And
100%, brother.
So it's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Until next time, man. Listeners, thank you so much. You want to follow Sam, you know where to do so. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.